All right, good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome to another episode of the Engineering Leaders podcast. Where we actually bring together engineering leaders like Wenya today, okay, from various fields to pick their brain and experiences on how a young aspiring engineer can succeed and have an exciting career ahead of them. So today we have Wenya on the show today. Wenya is currently an experienced lead product manager at Handshakes. So Handshakes is a multiple award-winning Singapore-based data tech company that provides their flagship solutions to their business clients for them to make safer and more informed decisions by delivering meaningful and reliable data. So Wenya started out her career as a technology consultant at Accenture before pursuing her Masters of Management Science and Engineering at Columbia in US, where she actually had the opportunity to work on multiple big projects in institutions such as Novo Nordisk, Louis Vuitton, as well as Twitter, to build a very powerful skill sets and experience. So without further ado, let's welcome Wenya here on this show today. Welcome Wenya. Really excited to have you here on this show today.
Thank you, Kenny. I like to introduce myself as someone that likes to turn dreams into reality. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis, like really charting the strategic direction of products, building bridges between teams, and do what it takes to get things into users' hands. I'm really excited to be on the show and really just to share my experiences with everybody here.
Awesome. So Wenya, why don't we kick things off by introducing yourself and to the audience and what you're currently doing at the moment at Handshakes.
Okay. So as Kenny mentioned, so currently I'm a lead product manager at Handshakes. So this is where I drive product strategy and development for our products, in particular Scout Asia. This is our corporate intelligence platform, which helps business strategists and researchers monitor markets and make better decisions. So earlier in February this year, my team launched a major update to the platform, and it included a totally new feature called Radar, which allows users to derive insights on a topic based on different angles and monitor it. So they can put different types of news filters, company lists that they're monitoring, and then get a holistic kind of insight on it. And so since then, we launched it out of beta and into the wild in some sense. I've been doing product research to continue defining the upcoming roadmap and iterate it. So that includes working with our business teams to understand our customers. So working with the AI team to understand what's the evolving technology and what are the things we can do with it and find the use cases. So of course, brainstorming ways with our engineering and development team on how we can continually improve the app and the user experience as well.
Awesome. Well, sounds very, really exciting. But could you share with the audiences, where the passion for becoming a product manager came about? I believe you started your career in as a technology consultant, but eventually actually moved down this path.
So I think there were three areas that I can see where my passion for becoming a product manager came from. So the first is that I think I'm naturally curious about the why of things. So that drives me to want to understand all the problems and opportunities and do pathfinding. So I'm okay with ambiguous problem statements and I want to find a path to drive clarity. The second is that I like working cross-functionally. I like to build bridges between teams, be it between business or engineering or ops or even our data ops team. Yeah. And I like to be able to flip from commercial conversations to business logic and technical discussions. And lastly, I have this satisfaction of launching something that didn't exist before and now actually solves a problem or creates value.
Awesome. Yeah. So, actually what you mentioned, it's a lot of actually, in fact, a lot of my friends, right, who are in the engineering field, they're actually very interested in the product management line. I think it's a very different route as opposed to more technical skills, which after a while, it's not as I would say as challenging, but I think people are actually seeking more dimensions to their work, especially in the realm of problem solving and actually designing certain things. So yeah, but actually, I'm just curious. Is being let's say a product manager a career path that a lot of engineers are looking at the current moment? Like, or am I getting something wrong here?
I think it really depends because in the end, product managers can come from almost any field. It's really about being able to structure problems and solve them. For my groups of friends who graduated with engineering degrees, they've also all gone to do many different things. So some do consulting, some are in AI, data science, some went to software engineering, some went to tech sales, and then some went to product management. I think that product is a role that is very cross-functional. So it's something that an engineer can definitely transit to as long as they have that interest and want to go into the strategy beyond just how to build things.
I see, I see. Yeah, so I just saw you actually started your career at Accenture, as a technology consultant. So, how was the experience transitioning from full-time studies to work for you back then?
Okay. So this was a couple of years ago. Yeah, it was actually pretty natural. In some ways, work gave me more freedom than being a student because I didn't feel bound
I
to
see, I see.
prepare for exams.
Right.
Um, and I think that back in the undergrad days, I also had a lot of opportunities to work with clients, with organizations outside. So it didn't feel that much different. And I think transiting from doing a few internships back in school, yeah, it felt like the natural way to go.
I see. So it's basically what you have been doing, but maybe on a full-time scale, in a way.
Yeah, I think you can say that.
All right, right. But I believe actually moving up the as a full-time role, right, you probably would have experienced certain initial challenges. Actually, what were some of the challenges you faced when you first started working as a consultant, and how do you actually overcome them?
Okay. When I first started working as a consultant, the interesting thing is that they sent me to the Consumer Innovation Center. So, I mean, your life really depends on, I guess, the first project they assign you to. So some of my friends went straight to tech delivery projects, but I went to the Innovation Center, and I was the third member in that team. Yeah, and this Consumer Innovation Center, I remember back in the day was at Marina Bay Financial Center. And we were to design and execute workshops that would help clients articulate their problems and find opportunities with emerging tech to solve them. So different account managers would bring their clients over and we would work out, what are their problems, what are the opportunities, and then inspire them with some demos of the latest trends of technology and then see what is possible for them. So some initial challenges was really figuring out how to bring value for clients that are much more experienced in their field. So I had to quickly learn about different industries such as retail, life sciences, real estate, industrial equipment. So these are all not industries that you would really go and study as a student, but you have to quickly understand it. Yeah, and then we had very tight timelines to deal with also. In terms of procuring the demo technology, making sure it's ready for use during the workshops, and also studying the clients to figure out what kind of use cases they could do. And of course, set up all the different logistics for the design thinking kind of elements. So how will we run the workshop and which kind of activities should we do? And of course, we're also always talking to either middle management or even senior management. So there were many times where C-suites came for such workshops, and being a fresh graduate at that time, it's having to present to C-suites. You have to figure out how to present such that they see value and they don't get bored after like 5 minutes or they're like, nah, we heard this before.
Right. Actually, in fact, I interviewed one. I'm not sure I know this person called Jaren. So he was in management consulting previously. So he was just telling me about like in terms of presentation, especially when you are talking to C-suites, right? His idea is really to make your presentation as concise, but also like a storybook. So it has to paint a narrative and it's easily digestible while also showing the key points. Yeah. So I mean, but what you mentioned is really true, about the idea of presentation, and you need to make sure that they don't fall asleep after 5 minutes. Right.
I think you have to
But
see the value, yeah.
right,
Exactly.
that's true. Yeah, so but how has your experiences in Accenture actually shaped the character skill sets that eventually help you to become a much better product manager?
Okay. I think that my experience in Accenture trained me in a few ways. So first was for the innovation center, I think it helped to shape my product and business sense for strategic thinking and presentation skills. Because it's really about discovery and trying to pathfind. Like a client could have many different problems, but which should they focus on, and what kind of technology could bring value. So rather than being about technology for technology's sake, what is the problem we're really trying to solve? And then secondly, in the next part of my career in Accenture, I did do some tech delivery projects. So things like building a platform for a loyalty program for a client. I think that shaped my ability to really write requirements, functional logic, test scenarios, define success metrics, and work in a cross-functional team with engineers and with QA and with the clients and all that. So the ability to deliver as well. And I think lastly, in terms of shaping my character, it just made me much more resilient and brave, or you could say thick skin, like just to be able to drive and define what to do, how to improve things. So if something doesn't seem to be working right, to figure out a tactful way to get to a better solution. Sometimes it's not about just telling people what is better, but slowly showing them through examples or through data and being persuasive.
Awesome. Yeah, so actually, it seems that you developed that passion, or you did some form of work or in consulting actually previously in your undergraduate days. I actually saw that, you volunteered, I believe, as an associate consultant at a conjunct consulting like institutions lah. I mean, could you share a little bit more about the experience back then?
Yeah, sure. So actually, Conjunct Consulting is a non-profit pro bono skills-based consulting. And then they take a batch of students every year from the different universities. So I remember that SUTD didn't have its own chapter. NUS, NTU, and SMU all did. But being the pioneer students, we're like, okay, even if we don't have a chapter, we'll just make one ourselves, right? We'll just make our own group.
Right.
So some of my fellow friends from both class and floorball, we decided to create a group and then go and try for it. I think it came from my own love of problem solving and trying to figure out how to communicate effectively. So that's why I said yes to it. So for Conjunct in particular, I think that the chance to contribute to the social sector with skills-based volunteering was very meaningful because we would be proposing solutions that could benefit a larger audience, so a wider group, like a multiplier kind of effect, rather than just executing and volunteering to do like very hands-on things. So I mean, in that sense, you create something that many people after you can use, and then it makes their lives easier.
So actually, could you share like what are some of the sort of like interesting or big projects that you were a part of during that time? And what are some of the lessons you learned from it?
Mm. So for Conjunct, we actually ended up doing kind of a tech consulting kind of project. I remember we were working with the Singapore Committee for UN Women, and we were looking at how we can improve their CRM or customer relationship management. So they had very manual processes, but they were exploring other solutions such as Salesforce or any other better way of managing their donor information and how to reach out to people that they always interact with. So I think that already gave me some sort of a taste of how using tech to solve organizational problems or operational problems would be like. yeah, in the end, we managed to evaluate the tech and figure out if there were ways for them to get it at a lower cost or how they should set it up. Yeah, things like that. That was on Conjunct. And of course, other big projects back in undergraduate days was, of course, capstone projects. So I had to work cross-functionally with 5 other architecture students and 1 other engineering student. Our task was to design a cafe space for a medical community. And we had to consider both the social goals, commercial goals, physical design, interior design of the space, and what's the operating model. And I guess, it really taught me how to navigate an ambiguous problem, starting from discovery to defining that problem, and then designing some solutions and prototyping and testing it. Yeah, so working cross-functionally was also a really great experience. I think I learned a lot from my architecture friends because they naturally have rather different perspectives or priorities compared to the engineering and business folks. And so we challenged each other and we had a lot of different opinions, but putting them all together, I think we came up with something that balanced the needs of the client and their end users. So I think that taught me that we can have better outcomes if we all, put this together and we assume the intent is really to come up with something that's of value to our clients and our users.
And what I'm hearing from you is that working in a more dynamic team with different strengths is really about acknowledging the strengths of like other people, and of course not dispensing that ego lah of like thinking that maybe your industry or your way is the best way, but it's really just how we can incorporate all of these different backgrounds into something that's actually much more effective lah. Is that right? See?
Yeah, correct. I mean, that's true today, especially even in product team where you have UX people, UI UX people, you have product people, you have AI people. Everybody's priorities is kind of different. But when you balance it out, you actually get a very good outcome. Like a UX person will always be like thinking about how the user is experiencing the product and whether it's something intuitive for them. And then the product person will be like, is there any value in this? Is this something we should even bother doing at the moment? Is there a business case for it? And then the AI person will be like, oh, the technology is not mature yet. Maybe it's not time for this. So, you got to balance like how you can do it and like when. So I think when you put all the perspectives together, that shapes a good final product. So yeah, that's something I learned even working with architecture students back in undergrad.
Awesome. Yeah, I know actually I had that same experience. I'm very glad like, to also work in Capstone as well. I think mine was a blockchain like website that helps in fund, I mean crowd crowdfunding. Yeah, so we actually developed a platform for that. Yeah, but that was a while ago also. So yeah. So I actually saw that, I mean, of course, you were working in Accenture for quite some time. But of course, eventually you did further your studies at Columbia University in the US, and to study management science and engineering. So I'm just curious, how did the opportunity come about, and what inspired you to make this big move in your career?
So actually, I always wanted to study or work overseas, get out of Singapore, and really immerse myself in a different environment. So in fact, back in undergrad, I had a short exchange program with MIT before my senior year. And I remember standing in front of the MIT dome and telling myself, I want to be back. I want a full overseas experience someday.
Yeah. I look at the photos, they were like, wow, shit, this is like where people should be at.
Yeah, so when I was making that decision to leave my first career and go, I actually saw that different groups of people had two polarizing perspectives. One type of people felt that disrupting career to go out and study for a year or 2 or 3 would set my career back in kind of wasting a few years that could be spent gaining work experience or climbing the ladder. And they felt that if you wanted a master's, you could continue working and take a local one part-time. And then there was a second group of people that felt that going overseas to study like that was a rare opportunity. For myself personally, I felt that the experience in itself is more important. So actually, I don't care about the paper certificate at all. So to me, it was about the opportunities and open doors to learn more and meet people from different cultures, to live in a different place and try new things. So, I mean, to me, I wouldn't have thought of doing a local master's, say, for the sake of it, but I just wanted this overseas experience for everything else.
I see. But actually, I was just curious as well. Was your master's fully paid by yourself, or like was it part of a scholarship program? Because I will imagine that studying overseas would be very expensive, and also at the same time that time commitment outside lah. So I was just more curious as to given the cost, why what about an overseas education and experience do you find so valuable that you made that move?
Okay. Yeah, so I actually funded it myself. There wasn't a scholarship. I didn't want to end up bonded to any organization because I wanted to keep the doors open for the future. But it actually wasn't that bad because my undergraduate studies was funded by a bond-free scholarship. So kind of like channeling the resources I had back then, to masters instead. But in any
Right.
case, I think that it's valuable because I think that if anyone has the means to, so you don't, it's not a must for life, but if you have the means to, then of course it's a privilege. But I would basically invest in experiences that would enrich my life because then money is the means to an end. So to me, there's little point accumulating all of it at the expense of missing life opportunities. And I think that education and this kind of overseas exposure and experiences, they shape you and they become a multiplier in general. So not thinking about the direct return on investment of a master's degree, but more of thinking about how will you be as a person, what will you learn, who are the people you're going to meet, what are the doors and opportunities you can open. Think of it that way rather than okay, how much monetary ROI can I get back from doing this particular course?
I see, I see. Well, but actually, what you've mentioned, that's very mature thinking, and of course, that is I've spoken to like many engineering leaders as well. So they also mentioned the same thing. In fact, actually, I interviewed one, who's very, I mean, he's a engineering leader in the maritime space. So he told me that in the past, right, he used to whenever he actually hopped to another job, right, he was more than okay to take like pay cuts like up to 20%, 25%, and he was okay with it. So I was asking him like why did he do that? So he was actually telling me something similar to what you've said, which is really about the experience because eventually money is something that you can always earn back, but experiences is something that you keep together with you for life, and that has tremendously helped him in his career as a byproduct also. Yeah, so but thanks for sharing that. But you mentioned that that like US presents itself like a very different working opportunity and that enrichment. So what are some of the things that you learned that you picked up in the US that you felt that has given you an edge over, or at least an advantage lah, when you move back to Singapore actually working in no local institutions?
Hmm. I think that in the US, the perspective I gained was that there is much more out there than just what we see in Singapore. There are bigger markets, there are more people, there's more diverse perspectives and opinions. So in terms of serving different markets and people, always considering who the audience is in the end. And I think that um, working with people of different cultures really sparks different kinds of innovation. Because you don't get stuck with people that have gone through all the same kind of education experiences, or you have people that have gone through certain things that Singaporeans don't. So, for example, in the US, it's actually a much bigger country, and I know their politics is really ridiculous and polarizing at times. It's
Right.
like a show, but you can understand why certain things are done in a certain way. If you think about how big the country is compared to, say, Singapore, certain things on how things are governed. When you have such a huge country, you need to have committees or like state governments to manage them, and then going down to counties and all that. It's just thinking of things at a much larger scale rather than the small scale in Singapore that we always think about. Yeah, and at the same time, I think that what I realized working with people there is that they're actually very efficient and direct. They don't like to waste time, and they're pretty much outcome driven. And rank is not an issue when it comes to driving initiatives. So as long as you have a valid concern or an idea, you can have autonomy to influence. And that is something that many local firms in Singapore might not have. So I'm saying that a lot of MNCs do have that, but there are some local firms that may struggle in that. In that a junior may not dare to speak up because they're afraid that their bosses may not like what they're saying and all that. Yeah, I think that that culture of openness to be able to be direct with colleagues, I think that is something very valuable as well.
I see. So actually, I mean, like in the US, I also saw that you intern and work on projects with big companies like Louis Vuitton, Novo Nordisk, as well as Twitter on multiple big projects like during your time at Columbia. So could you share your working experiences there and some of the interesting projects that you've been a part of? And also share maybe some of the challenges you faced there and what you learned from the experience.
Sure. So for Louis Vuitton and Novo Nordisk, those were both operations and strategy consulting projects with my course mates. So we had a 2 semester long kind of engagement with the clients. Yeah, so we were traveling to the client site almost every week or every other week to meet them, to scope the project and to work on things. Pretty much treated like graduate interns. So Novo Nordisk was really nice. They issued us all with laptops even to access the data and all that. And then for Louis Vuitton, they let us come to their distribution center in New Jersey and shadow the employees and talk to them and really observe how they're getting things done. Yeah, so I think in terms of challenges, I think that validating the problem statement and scoping projects is always the most difficult. So Louis Vuitton actually came to us first with a problem statement that was very solution focused. They said they wanted us to explore AR and VR, so augmented reality and virtual reality, for training purposes. But as we spoke to them, and then we did a lot of on-site interviews and observations, we realized that wasn't the main issue, but it was more about process improvement and efficiency for their short-term new hires who have to pick up learning something very fast, and also figuring out how to match, say, package dimensions to the item they are picking quickly. So saving time and things like that. So we ended up doing a study to recommend business process improvements in the warehouse, opportunities for tools such as matching the product dimensions to the type of SKU they are picking, or things like what kind of videos are the most helpful for them, and some sort of optimization kind of software, trying to figure out how they can optimize their routes in the whole picking process. Yeah, so I think all in all, that was a very interesting kind of problem that we could take and flip around. We could tell the client that, hey, the original problem statement you gave us, maybe that's not the main thing. These are the findings that we had. And then slowly we managed to evolve the project to, I think, deliver something of better value.
I see, I see. So it's from what you are saying, what I learned is that you don't, like, let's say if someone comes to you and they want a certain outcome, it's not to be very eager to deliver what they perceive or like what they want lah, but it's really to dig one level deeper by asking that right questions first on whether that solution is even on the right track in the first place lah. Yeah, so yeah, but I mean, yeah, so I think that's what I gotten from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the dot.
Right. So I'm just curious as well because I believe you've seen the way US people work and probably would have some merits and positive traits from there. So what, during your time there, what are some of the cultural differences in the US versus let's say in Singapore, and what are some of the positive things that we can actually learn from the US on how they do their work and innovate and bring it, and how have you actually brought that experience back in Singapore when you work?
Okay. So I noticed this when I was working at Twitter in San Francisco. This was back in the day before Elon Musk took over with his sync and all that. Uh,
Right, right. Must
people
be a
are very efficient and direct. They don't like to waste time. And I think they are outcome focused, so they really have this thing called OKRs, objective and key results, that they put out there, and then they keep evaluating whether the projects they are doing meets those OKRs for that particular quarter. So I think evaluating the performance of the work. The other thing is that they are very helpful if you need their time. So even if they're from a different department and you need some information or advice from them, they typically will give you the time. Of course, they will time box it, and only if the incentives later on are aligned, then they will really help you more. But at the very least, they are willing to sit down and listen to you. So that power of listening. So
Mm.
rather than just jumping straight into a problem, the power of listening and gathering more information and understanding more about the other party's perspectives. Yeah, I think these are all things that I still bring into today's work. And also, I think the work-life balance in the US, um, they typically, I mean, I guess it depends on the state, but in California, nobody likes to stay in the office past like 5:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. If you're there past 6 p.m., you're probably the only one left. But
Right.
they like to have a life. And I think that that whole idea of being efficient at work and then going off to, tend to your family or your hobbies or something else. Yeah, I think I really appreciated to be in an environment where people do that.
I see, I see. In Singapore, if you leave at 6:30, you are like the odd one out. It's like, yeah, but what we can learn is really not just about showing people that we are working hard by working longer hours per se, but it's like what we actually do in those productive working hours. Yeah. So yeah, but thanks for sharing, your experiences in US. So I'm also very curious because you do have like side hobbies, and of course there are some things, probably your hobbies would also shape the way you are today. So I think one of your hobbies you mentioned that you do a lot of like ballroom dancing and like Latin dancing as well. So I'm just curious, where did that passion came about?
Okay. Yeah. So I've always wanted to dance, but I never really had the chance to. Well, I did join a small dance group in my church when I was growing up, but I mean, that was more of an interest thing rather than a serious training. When I was at Columbia, New York, I walked into the intro session for the ballroom team, and then I found it very interesting, because partner dance, it's beyond just training for yourself. You have to execute this with your dance partner or any other person that you dance with. And there's that whole technical challenge that's actually very satisfying to kind of learn. And I think that it's a sport that actually challenges both my physical kind of training. So like building the muscle, the control, the awareness, the lines. It also challenges my stamina because for ballroom dance sport, there are competitions. And when you go on the competition floor, um, every dance is 1.5 minutes. And at the highest level, you would do 5 dances in a row. So 1.5 minutes times 5. So there's no giving up for your stamina when you are dying halfway as well. And the last thing is the social aspect, where having this skill actually allows you to meet more people and connect with people in ways other than just talking to each other, but through enjoying a sport and being able to lead and follow with each other without having to say anything.
I see. But on that point, right? I believe you will have like some experience and went through certain like events. So, could you share some of the interesting lessons and discoveries about yourself that you learned along the way while pursuing dancing?
Mm. So I think the first is that to start, right? Like, I mean, it may seem quite daunting, but just start. I think that is the first lesson. So I started taking the group classes back in Colombia, and it was actually quite difficult in the beginning, to grasp the concepts and to execute all these things because there's so many things to learn. You have to learn your steps, then you have to learn how to dance it with somebody else, and then you have to learn how to not trip over and make it look nice and all that. Actually, there were a lot of times I felt like I was going to give up, but then I decided to just show up for class and then just try. Yeah, and usually after showing up for class, I realized that I never regret ever showing up for class. So just being there and just trying your best. I think that's the first. The second is that I think along the way, as I started to dance more and more and get a little better, I realized that uh, you need to find coaches or people that can break down and explain these concepts well to you. So the quality of coaching is actually very important. So usually for ballroom dancers, in order to really learn the skills and take this up long term, you have to take private lessons. So actually group lessons is not enough. So you have to go and seek out a coach, do private lessons and all that. And the last is to practice the correct thing. So if you keep practicing the wrong thing, you might injure yourself or you might pick up the wrong habits. But so that's tied to number two. If you have a coach that can point out to you what are the ways to do it efficiently, then you can practice the right thing. But of course, you have to think for yourself as well. Don't only rely on your coach. You have to figure out what are your objectives, and be self-aware of what do you think you are lacking and what do you think your coach should help you with. So then you can have a constructive conversation with your coach to say, I want to work on this. This is working for me. No, this is not working for me. Can you show me how to improve this? Or if you're not sure, then you'll be like, okay, can you just look at our dance and tell us what are the ways where should we aim for next? Things like that. So being very focused in what you want to do in that short time with your coach.
I see, I see. Well, actually, I think a lot of these lessons can also be applied in your, the workspace and in your career as well. It's really about seeking the mentor to highlight certain important blind spots that you might not see, and also really practice on the correct things. We don't want to just waste our energy on like the wrong things as well. Yeah, so I mean, thanks for sharing your passion. Hopefully, you are still having time as to pursue your hobbies.
Yeah, I am. I still do competitions back here in Singapore. I continue to dance, preparing for another one probably in July or later this year.
Oh, okay, okay. All the best, all the best. Wow. It's very soon already. Now it's already May. Yeah. So, I believe the audiences at this juncture would like to know more about you as a person and your journey to where you are right now. So, as someone who has been through the journey, starting from a more junior positions at Accenture, all the way to eventually becoming the lead product manager, I believe, at Handshakes. Could you share some of the most memorable experiences you have been part of in that development journey? And what were some of the biggest lessons you wish you would tell yourself years ago?
Hmm. So I think one of the most memorable experiences was actually at Handshakes in my current company. So that was the time when I switched gears from being in consulting to being like kind of in a product company. So that's where I could start looking at long-term roadmaps and understanding and figuring out how, in the long term, we should build our product. The most memorable experience there was really building features, in the end, launching features that never existed before. So we actually inherited a product from one of our strategic partners, and things were done in a certain way. So features were built in a certain way, but they were not necessarily the most intuitive or the most not necessarily presented in the best way for people, basically. So we did a lot of product research and figured out a more streamlined way of showing this journey. But of course, the original users that used to, use the product, and many business team members that have been used to the old product, they had a lot of concerns as well on changing. So change is usually not easy to manage, but we managed to slowly figure out how to manage this change. And I think when we finally got the feature from a beta feature into a release to everybody kind of feature, I think that was a really memorable time. Yeah, so it's interesting. So now when the talent team introduces like that those particular features to new joiners, they would say that, oh, if you want to know more about it, go and ask the product manager when, yeah, this one was her brainchild last year. I'm like, okay. That's nice. So yeah.
Okay.
Mm,
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. So as you also progress in your career into management, I believe you also lead high performing engineering teams. I'm sure that you actually gone through that struggle of self-discovery, especially in leadership, on how to actually become a much better leader for your team. So could you share some of the experiences that you had, while you are a lead product manager, and what are some of the things that you took away in leadership lah, that the audiences can learn from also?
mm. So I think in leadership, so I think I've been very blessed and privileged in my career, because my CPO actually gave me a lot of opportunities to lead, and also learn things that's happening at the higher C-suite kind of level, to be exposed to these challenges. So to see beyond just product, but how does the organization as a whole function, and how are we supposed to survive as an organization and work together across the different functions. So I think some of the lessons that I learned about leadership is that being consistent is something that people value, but it's also very difficult. So in front of, say, clients versus internal teams, versus people who are higher rank, lower rank than you, can you be consistent in the messaging you're giving them, but at the same time balancing your objectives and the optics? Because sometimes you want to achieve something, but you can't tell people certain information directly. So how do you get them to understand and empathize without telling them things that they are not allowed to know? So I think it's paving the way for those conversations, and for them to see the value or what is your objective. And if they know that you care about them at the end of the day, then I think it makes the whole conversation easier. And that brings me to the lesson about keeping up the morale of the team. So there'll always be ups and downs. There'll be dry seasons, and there'll be very intense seasons. So sometimes, you have tight deadlines, and then everybody is stressed and then really trying to do their best. But then sometimes they can't meet the timelines, and just trying to be empathetic about that and figure out how we can unblock them. I think that is one of the greatest things we can do. And of course, developing talents in the team. So it's not about keeping all the knowledge to yourself, but how can you institutionalize a lot of the knowledge that you have in a way that, if you're not around tomorrow or next week, you went off for a trip, that, your deputies and your team members can quickly pick up the pace and continue. So it's kind of a it may not be so intuitive to some people, because some people think that in order to be important at work, you should, hog all the information and resources, so that you will always be the most important people that people go to. But in fact, to be a good leader, you need to figure out how to make yourself redundant in what you're doing now, so you can empower your teammates to do it, and so you can focus on the next value of creating more value, like the next level of creating value. So then everybody multiplies, and then your team can work more effectively together.
I see, I see. Thanks for sharing those pointers. So actually, so if I were to summarize, it would be really about first of all, really grooming the team and empowering them that they can be much better than they should, and also really keeping the morale as well. It's about also understanding that there are seasons of dry and seasons of intense period, and how do we manage their emotions, and especially also eventually also helping them to move up the next level, so that they can eventually take up some of your responsibilities, so that you can focus more towards the bigger design, and help to strategize forward the team. So yeah, but actually I'm just curious as well, because you mentioned about managing the morale, which is a challenge, a communication challenge that a lot of leaders face. But what were some of the things that you do to help raise the morale, and how do you actually communicate the bigger intent to your team, so that they are very motivated to move the projects forward?
I think the first is always sharing the why. And because that helps people to understand why certain decisions are made, or why should they care about something. And the other thing is that to manage your morale, you need to build relationships with them. So if you don't have a good relationship with people that you are working with, or managing, or working side by side with, they're not going to spend time telling you what issues they're facing, or what's really going on. So that's the difference. If you have a genuine kind of relationship with them, then that's where you're able to honestly work out, what is the problem and how can we move ahead. And of course, the last one is assuring them that you've got their back. So in the abilities that you have, in the amount of influence you have, to help them if they have any issues at work, and how can we unblock them.
I see. So I mean, in summary, it's more towards really about really firstly building that relationship with them, just really understanding what is truly their deep-rooted problems lah. Of course, from there is to actually push them in the right direction forward. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah, correct. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. The other one is to also have fun as a team.
Uh,
Yeah, because I mean you work together day in and day out, but like don't forget to be friends with each other, have lunch, have outings, just get to know each other outside of the office as well. So, while we're working very hard, can we also like get to know each other and enjoy each other's time? I think that is also one of the most valuable things that boost the morale of people.
I see. Okay, awesome. So, I believe actually people who, I mean, I do have like friends, and I believe the audiences, some of them would be very interested to find out exactly how they can design a career towards product management. So, could you share with the audiences like what were some of the activities or useful activities that you think that someone, maybe an undergraduate or someone, let's say, doing thinking of a career transition towards product management should develop, like the skills that they should develop to eventually move to becoming much more senior, take up more senior positions in institutions, especially in the product management line?
Hmm. I think that mm, in order to do that, you need to look at both your industry knowledge, your technical skills, your communication skills, and also how do you communicate this and drive clarity. So some of the activities you can do while still a student is try and find like-minded course mates that also want to develop such skills. So go and look for, like what I did, the skills-based consulting things like Conjunct, or I mean, I think there's many different kinds of organizations these days, but basically a platform that will let you, in a safe space, learn and try and develop these skills. I think going for things like case competitions also helps. Um, Whether you win or not, I mean, it's the process and what you learn while you were preparing for that case competition and things like that. The other is, of course, trying to seek out internships and mentorships. So if you can find an internship that allows you to learn what an organization does, how do people think about things and build products, it doesn't necessarily have to be a product internship, but at least go somewhere where you can see how people solve problems. So you could join perhaps a data operations team, you could join a testing team, if you can't get into a product team. I mean, it will expose you to at least the way companies think about their products and their processes. So then by the time you start your first career, you already have these things in mind about what is expected and how you can try and drive value.
I see. And I mean, I believe you also mentor a lot of like younger engineers. Do you have any advice for them on, let's say, if let's say they are currently working right now, okay, how can they create more opportunities in, let's say, while working or in their career so that they can move up more senior management levels like yourself?
I think one is in the work they're doing themselves, and the other would be in the realm of work, but outside of what their main tasks are. So in their main tasks, I think that showing aptitude for being more senior, it shows when they take initiative and drive to ask the why questions and then provide feedback or provide feedback or information that actually helps people make decisions better. So my example is that if you have engineer A who just takes the Jira ticket and the requirements and just builds it, whether doesn't matter whether the text on it makes sense or not, the logic makes sense, they just implement it. Versus engineer B that reads it and is like, okay, what's this feature for? Oh, that text doesn't seem to make much sense. Are you sure you wanted this text or is there a typo? Or like they can go, there's a scenario that you guys may not have considered. If we build it this way, this might happen. So having that conversation back with the more senior engineers or the other product managers or people working with them, I think that shows that they are thinking about things and not just executing. So yeah, that's the first when it comes to things that they have been assigned to. The second is to look out for gaps that, even if no one assigned you something, but you see that, the documentation for the platform is not doing very well, or like, a certain process can be improved, then taking that initiative to kind of improve that, to show your ideas, show a prototype of that, try and implement something if people allow you to. I think that would give you visibility as well. It's definitely not in your job description, but if it creates value, it won't go unnoticed.
Mm, I see. Actually, what you mentioned was something similar to what another engineering leader also told me before. So when he was progressing his career, he always speak to other departments as well to really understand the whole ecosystem of like businesses, and also go above and beyond to be more of a intra designer within the company lah. So means that while it's not within his job scopes, he will always look for opportunities to feedback and improve lah. So in a way that shifts the value, because right now you are not just an employee, but you are someone who has a vested interest in the alignment of the company lah. So I mean, is that how you also did? So I mean, like, develop your career as well.
I think that looking back at my career, I mean, besides just my usual task of figuring out the roadmap and the features and all that, is looking out for where those inconsistencies are. So say at the beginning we didn't have a very ironed out kind of process, to show what are the things we need in defining a project and how should we be working with the engineers, how should we be working with QA, how should we be launching the products together with sales. So I think driving clarity in that, putting your hand up to not be afraid to propose ideas and policies. I think those were all things that naturally to me, if they were not fixed, it will make it very difficult for everybody else to work together.
I see. Okay, awesome. So, as we, wrap up the podcast, okay, maybe we just have some concluding like advices that you wish to share with your audiences lah. So, what are some of the common mistakes that you notice in many young engineers that they make that jeopardizes their promotion or, career opportunities?
Okay. I think three things. The first is growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So if they have a fixed mindset that they'll be stuck doing something forever, like just because I start in a certain kind of task or department, I'm just going to be stuck here forever. That's going to limit them versus a growth mindset where, I pick up the skills I can here, I pick up the experiences I can, and then I try and move up, move into other things by, showing I'm good at this, and then after that trying to move cross-functionally or move somewhere else. Yeah, the second is that some of them feel that they need to have a perfect job that they have passion for. So if they are not passionate about their work and it doesn't bring them joy and happiness, this is not the career path for them. So honestly, I don't think any job should be the 100% source of your joy anyway. And there's also no job that you're going to love 100%. But it's about using the opportunities in your job to pick up the skills that later on you'll be able to apply them and get to places where perhaps you can do things that you have passion for, or maybe your passions outside of work as well. And you do things at work that gives you joy, but you also have passion outside of work. So it doesn't have to be your be all and all. And the last thing is that the misconception that if a job doesn't pay a very high salary, it's not worth taking. So sometimes like in order to learn a certain kind of skill or to work in a certain industry, the pay may not be as high in certain places, but it might give you autonomy or freedom or the opportunity to pick up certain skills, meet certain people, build certain things that are more interesting than if you went to somewhere that had a higher salary, but then maybe you're limited by the SOPs and all you have to do is do this particular thing very well, kind of mindset. So I think it really depends. Of course, I'm not saying that you should go for something that has a low salary. I'm just saying that like optimizing only for the highest salary for a job is probably not the most long-term beneficial kind of mindset to have.
I see. Yeah, thanks so much. Actually, these are pointers that a lot of like younger engineers tend to fly by their head. Sometimes they revolve their life around work, and especially it's always a very, I don't know whether is it a Singaporean thing, but I think a lot of times people like to compare between like work compensations and put a value of the job, with and use money and salary as the end all be all matrix lah. So my thanks for the reminder that ultimately it's really about the acquisition of skills that eventually as a byproduct gives you and opens doors to opportunities outside. So anyways, as we come to the end, do you have any last piece of advice for the audiences out there who are looking into a career in product management and growing up the leadership route as well?
So I think that there's something that I learned from my mentors, which is that whether it's product management or any career, there are three things that you have to manage, which is yourself, others, and money. So first, you need to manage yourself. Are you able to solve problems and deliver the work as an individual contributor. And the second is, can you manage others? So even if you don't have anybody under you, so maybe you are the most junior person, are you able to manage your peers? And can you manage up? Can you manage your supervisors or bosses in a way that both of you have a very good working kind of relationship and they can see your value? And the last is, when you get those, then that's where your one day you will get the chance to then manage budgets or money in your company. And as you start thinking about the profits and losses and what the company cares about, then that's where you gain that perspective of, okay, how can I drive value and just create more value for the company? So I mean, being able to think about these three things and developing skills in all of them, I think that is one of the key fundamental areas for developing in career. And of course, for product management, your skills of writing, clearly, being able to write your specs clearly, being able to communicate clearly, these are all things that you need to pick up along the way.
I see. Okay, awesome. So, as we wrap up this episode today, thank you, Wenya, for very, abundantly sharing your knowledge and your experiences as a lead product manager at Handshakes. How can we actually connect with you to seek advice and opportunities?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I think you can find my profile quite easily because I have a pretty unique name. So that's
Yeah, I can imagine so.
you can
Awesome.
message me there.
Okay, awesome. So I will put a link below on podcast and for you guys to actually reach out to her for advice and opportunities. So yeah. So anyways, thank you, Wenya, for being an awesome guest on today's show, and hope whatever she has shared with you has inspired all of you to really take up arms to build your career in the right direction. Awesome. Okay. See you in the next episode.